we got place value number 2 tonight. All right, we have place value number 1 first, and this is the same concept, a little bit more in depth. There are 3 ways to express a number. There's standard form, word form, and expanded form. And I know all of y'all have heard this somewhere along the way, especially in 3rd and 4th grade. We're going to take it a little bit more at an advanced level, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The standard form of a whole number shows the number written in numerals. All right? For example, the standard form for 29 would be 29. How about 372? We would write it as 372. Or what about 1006? 1006. It's written in numeric form, just written in numerals. Word form is the number written in words, not using any numerals. To read a number, you would say it in the period, which is the group of numbers separated by a comma, and then you would say the period name. Remember in class we talked about every 3 digits has a comma, and that's called the period, every 3 digits. For example, if we had this number, we would say that this is 126,978. The reason is 126 is in the thousands period, and 978 is in the ones period. So that's why we would say it or write it as 126,000, and there's your comma, 978. Now, expanded form is the number broken down by place value. We add it back together when we're trying to figure out what the number is, but expanded form is it's actually broken down or decomposed. For example, if we had 6,921, we would express it in standard form as 6,000 plus 900 plus 20 plus 1. Because the 6 is in the thousands place, 6 times 1 is 6,000, plus, we're breaking it down, decomposing it, 9 is in the hundreds place, 9 times 100 is 900, the 2 is in the tens place, 2 times 10 is 20, and the 1 is in the ones place. 1 times 1 is 1. Now, place value can also be shown when you're using decimals. It doesn't have to be just whole numbers. When you use decimals, you use decimal points, and those separate your whole numbers from your decimal numbers. For example, here's the decimal point here. Here's your whole numbers. Of course, hundreds would be here and thousands and all. And here are your decimal place values. We're only going to use 3 this year. We're going to be using the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. All right, only those 3. You'll get up into the higher ones. The next place values over here in 6th grade and up. We use the tenths and the hundredths in our money system. The tenths is like dimes. If there's a number here, that means, let's say there was a 6 here, that would mean there were 6 dimes or 60 cents, 6 tenths. The hundredths would be the pennies, and there's 100 parts. In other words, 100 pennies in $1. Now, the thousandths in our money system, we don't use that. That's not represented, but that maybe will help you a little bit when you think of the decimal places as kind of related to our money system. Now, speaking of decimals, the farther you move to the right with the decimal, the smaller the number gets. And we were just saying that tenths, dimes, are bigger than, they have more value than pennies. Whole numbers increase by multiplying by 10. In other words, everything in a whole number, as you go to the left, the value gets bigger and bigger by tens. But decimals are the opposite. They decrease by dividing by tens as you go. In other words, the hundredths are 10 times smaller than the tenths, and the thousandths are 10 times smaller than the hundredths. For example, if I gave you this number, 8/10 has more of a value, 10 times more of a value than 8/100. Think of this as 8 dimes. You would definitely, if somebody said, what would you rather have, 8 dimes or 8 pennies, you'd probably say, I would rather have 8 dimes because it's more, it's worth more. So 8/10 is 10 times more than 8/100. All right. If you saw this decimal, you would pronounce it as 24/100 because the 4, which is the last number here to the right, is in the hundredths place. If you saw this decimal, we would pronounce it 71 thousandths because the numeral that is furthest to the right is in the thousandths place. There are no tenths. There's only hundredths and thousandths. Decimals also can be expressed in standard, word, and expanded form, just like whole numbers can. Now, the standard form is always the numerical form of the decimal. Let's say that we had 38/100. The standard form for 38/100 is this. The 3 is in the tenths place, and the 8, which is the last number as farthest to the right, it's in the hundredths place. We would write it as decimal point 38. What if it was 694 thousandths? We would write it as decimal point 694, like this. The 6 is in the tenths, the 9 is in the hundredths, and then the 4 is in the farthest place to the right. And since that's the thousandths place, we call it 694 thousandths. Word form is the decimal written in just words, no numerals. For example, this decimal would be written in words as 53/100. And we would write 53/100 because the 3, the number farthest to the right, is in the hundredths place. Now, expanded form is the decimal numeral broken apart by place value. Same thing as the whole numbers, except now we're going to be using decimal points. You're probably used to seeing something like this. This in expanded form would be 7/10 plus 4/100, and that would equal 74/100. Remember that the 4 is in the farthest place to the right, and that's in the hundredths place, so that's why we would write decimal point 04, because the 4 is in the hundredths place. Now, you will see it like that this year, but you also will see it slightly differently. In 5th grade, we take the expanded decimal form a step further. This may be a little difficult, but I bet you'll get it once you understand exactly what this means. Let's look at this example again. 74/100. All right, what this really is 7, because there's a 7 there, and times 1/10, because that is the tenths place. Plus, we're breaking it down, the 4 is in the, you're probably thinking hundredths place, you're right. So that would be 4 times 1/100th, because it's in the hundredths place. And when we do the math on that, that comes out as 7/10 plus 4/100. If you add them together, that is 74/100. Here's another example. Let's see, there are no tenths. So you don't have to write 0 times 1/10. You can skip through that. The 2 is in the hundredths place. So you would write 2 times 1/100th. Then we add it together with this. The 3 is in the thousandths place. So we would write 3 times 1,000th. Now you're going to notice we're only going to use tenths, hundredths, and thousandths this year because that's the only 3 decimal place values we'll use. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier. Let's do one more because I think some of you are thinking, I still don't get this. Let's say that we have 726. This would be 7 times, the 7's in the tenths place, 1/10. The 2 is in the hundredths place. That would be 2 times 100th. And the 6 is in the thousandths place. 6 times 1,000th. And that would be the expanded form of this decimal in this new way of expressing it, which I know is a little different from this. I get that. I understand what you mean. We'll work on it in class, though. Don't worry. All right, tonight, on your practice problems, and this should be on square number 3, and I don't have a homework guide to show you, but on square number 3, where it says practice problems, you're going to write these numbers in standard word and expanded forms. Now, lucky you, it's already in standard form. So all you need to do now is word and expanded form. Now, easy enough here. When you get to these decimals, try to see if you can write these decimals in this new expanded form here. If you just you just can't, you tried and tried, you just don't get it, you understand this better, you can use it in decimals. But let's see if you can use the new fractional form of it, which is a little different way of seeing the value of the number in expanded form. So try that. We are going to go over it tomorrow. We'll definitely rework it tomorrow, especially if you have questions, okay? All right, so this goes in section 3, and there are 4 practice problems for this. All right? Thanks. If you need to look over any of this again, you can replay any part of it that you need in order to understand it, okay? We'll definitely talk about it tomorrow. All right.